What if the phrase, "there's nothing more we can do," does not have to be the final word? In this episode, you'll discover why your prognosis is not a prophecy, what remarkable recovery stories reveal about the body's incredible and miraculous capacity for self-repair, and how to find hope again, even in the face of seemingly impossible odds. Stay with me until the end, because I'll give you practical steps to take when you or someone you love has been told there are no options left. If you have ever sat across from a doctor and heard words like incurable, terminal, progressive, or phrases like "there's nothing more we can do," or "you may want to get your affairs in order," you know those words do not land as information alone. They hit you hard. They suck the air out of the room. And they make the future feel like it is suddenly narrowed down to a hallway with no doors. And yet one of the central reasons I started Renegade Remission is because a prognosis, no matter how serious, is not the same thing as a prophecy. A prognosis is a medical estimate based on available data, population averages, disease behavior, and what is known from prior outcomes. That matters. We don't need to dismiss it, deny it, or pretend it means nothing. But it is also not a prediction of what will happen in one individual human body. This is where the stories of remarkable recovery become so important. Not because they give us guarantees. They don't. That's not the message here. And I never want this show to become a place where people are handed false hope. But remarkable recovery stories do something medicine still has not learned how to do. They remind us that biology and physiology is not nearly as linear as we think it to be, and that the human body is designed to heal, fully capable of doing things that surprises even the people who have spent their lives studying disease. And if this episode resonates with you, you may also want to go back and listen to episode 42, Do People Ever Heal from Incurable Illnesses? What 3,500 plus documented remissions reveal. Because that episode gives more of the larger research context behind remarkable recoveries and remission and documented cases of unexpected healing. Today, though, I want to begin with just one of those cases of unexpected healing because one true story can change your perception in a way that statistics alone cannot. The story I want to share today comes from the book Remarkable Recovery by Carol Hirschberg and Mark Ian Barash, a book that investigates medically unusual recoveries and asks why these cases have so often been dismissed instead of more deeply studied. I'm going to paraphrase their account carefully here, and I want to credit them fully because this is their research and their storytelling that preserves this case. Carol Knudsen was in her early 50s when she began noticing a strange sensation in the back of her throat. It felt like something small and irritating, the kind of thing you might blame on dry air, a scratch, a stray piece of food, or something that would just pass if you waited long enough. But it didn't pass, and as the weeks went on, the sensation became harder to ignore. What began as a tiny irritation started to feel more intrusive, as though something was pressing or poking inside of her throat. Then a lump visibly appeared on her neck. Eventually, a biopsy revealed that Carol had a fast-growing lymphoma. The medical report on her case described it as an aggressive subtype in which regression was extremely rare. The message she received was stark. She was told, in essence, that this was not good. Surgery, radiation, chemotherapy, these would all be enough to buy time but not cure her. Her husband, Dean, did not want to stop there. He insisted they go to the Mayo Clinic for another opinion, so they went, and Carol spent about a week going through the full process of evaluation, scans, tests, bone marrow testing, and everything that comes with trying to understand how far a cancer has gone and what should happen next. And then, while she was still in that process, Carol noticed something that seemed impossible. She became convinced that the lump in her throat was getting smaller. When she told her doctors, they did not receive that observation as a meaningful clue. According to Carol's account, the doctors basically laughed at her, responding, "No, it can't get smaller." From their point of view, that was not how this disease was supposed to behave. But Carol kept sensing that something was changing. The Mayo Clinic eventually confirmed the original diagnosis and sent Carol back to Madison for treatment. But when she returned and was examined again, the mass was no longer what it had been. Instead of the larger growth that had caused such concern, there was only a small remaining growth. She was referred to an ear, nose, and throat specialist, and by then, according to the account, there was no visible condition left to treat at all. Because the primary tumor appeared to be regressing, Chemotherapy was withheld, and Carol was followed closely with monthly physical exams. Within weeks, her symptoms were gone, and by late spring of 1982, the cervical lymph node had regressed completely, and her physical exam was normal. This is, admittedly, the kind of story that leaves us with more questions than answers. Carol had not changed her diet. In fact, Hirschberg and Brosh describe her as someone who openly admitted she ate a lot of junk food. She had not begun a complex supplement routine. She had not gone on a retreat, changed her entire lifestyle, or started an intensive healing protocol. The story doesn't really give us a neat formula, and actually that's part of why I think it belongs in this episode. Because if the only remarkable recovery stories we share are the ones where someone changes everything, then I might accidentally teach people that healing is only possible when we can explain every step. But Carol's story doesn't allow for that. Her story is a total mystery. It does not prove that positive thinking cured her cancer, although she did have a long-standing belief in the power of hope and positive expectation. It doesn't prove that prayer cured her, although she did remember feeling encouraged when a priest prayed over her in the hospital. It also does not prove that doing nothing is a treatment strategy, and I want to be very clear about that. What it does prove is simpler and honestly more hopeful. It proves that there are cases where the body changes course in ways that medicine cannot understand. And once we admit that, we have to consider abandoning the word impossible. In medicine, stories like Carol's are often placed under the category of spontaneous remission or spontaneous regression. On the surface, that term sounds neutral. It simply means that a disease regressed in a way that cannot be explained by treatment. But the problem with the word spontaneous, and I'm guilty of using it here, is that it can make these recoveries sound random, almost like a lightning strike. Something happened and no one knows why, and there's nothing to learn. But arguably, this makes spontaneous healing become kind of a closed door. If we label recovery spontaneous and then move on, we may miss the chance to ask good questions about it. What was happening in the body? What was happening in the immune system? Was the tumor unusually vulnerable in some way? Did inflammation, infection, hormones, blood supply, genetics, or some other biological factor play a role? Were there psychological, spiritual, emotional, nutritional, social, or environmental factors that were never recorded because the medical case report did not ask about them? These questions matter because traditional medical cases often focus on what can be measured in the clinic: diagnosis, imaging, labs, pathology, treatment, and outcome. Those are essential, but they don't capture the full life of the person inside the case. They do not tell us what the person was eating, what they believed, whether they were isolated or loved, whether they were under unbearable stress, whether they quit a job, whether something in their emotional life shifted, whether they had found a reason to keep living, or whether they felt an inner resolve that changed how they participated in their care. If we never ask those questions, then we also can never study them. And this is one of the greatest tensions in remarkable recovery research. On one hand, we want to be rigorous. We cannot turn every beautiful story into proof, but on the other hand, if we dismiss every unusual case because it does not fit what we already understand, then we are throwing away clues. And this is where the conventional conversation becomes much too small. If the question is only what treatment affected the disease, we miss a much more important question, which is what helped restore the conditions under which the body could participate more fully in repair, resilience, immune regulation, and healing. That second question is the heart of this podcast. Carol's story does not prove that aggressive lymphoma is easy to reverse. It does not tell us that people should refuse treatment and wait and see what happens. It does not tell us that every body will behave like Carol's body did. But what it does tell us is that biology is oftentimes more surprising than prognosis leaves room for. And for someone who has been told there is no hope, that distinction really matters. Because when a doctor says there's nothing more we can do, that may mean there is no more standard treatment they recommend. It may mean the disease has not responded as hoped. It may mean the known medical options have become limited, and it may mean the statistics are sobering. In short, it means that there is nothing more they, the doctor, can do. But it does not necessarily mean there is nothing more you can do. There are still ways to support nourishment. There are still ways to support sleep. There are still ways to lower stress load. There are still ways to reduce inflammation, improve strength. restore connection, seek another opinion, ask better questions, participate in decisions, and create an internal and external environment that supports life as fully as possible. And perhaps most importantly, there may still be mystery that allows us to say we're going to tell the truth about what we know, and we are also going to leave room for what we do not know yet. So what do you actually do if you've been told there's no hope, or if someone you love has received that kind of message? The first step is to get your records and consider getting a second opinion when appropriate. This is not about distrusting every doctor. It's about recognizing that different physicians, institutions, specialties, and integrative teams may see different possibilities. You can ask for your pathology reports, imaging reports, lab results, treatment history, medication list, and a written summary of what has been tried and what has been recommended. The next step is to become a respectful observer of your own body. Carol noticed that something was changing before her doctors accepted that it could. Your intuition and insight matters. Pay attention. Write things down. Track symptoms, energy, appetite, sleep, mood, pain, swelling, digestion, anything that seems to shift. Bring these observations into your care. Your body is not a machine being studied from the outside. You are living inside of it, and that gives you really great information. The next step is to get really, really curious. Ask big questions and research their answers. What supports the healthiest state in my body right now? What has helped people with this diagnosis live longer, feel better, or recover unexpectedly? What helps my immune system, nervous system, metabolism, and emotional life become less depleted and more resilient? Those questions may not give you complete answers, but they keep you engaged in your healing journey and keep the door open to possibility. And choose one healing pillar to begin with, in whatever area you intuitively believe you need the most help with. If you are undernourished, begin with food and nutrition. If you are stressed out or terrified or not sleeping, begin with nervous system regulation and rest. If you are isolated and feeling lonely, begin with one safe connection to a friend or family member, or find a supportive community. If your body feels weak, begin with the smallest movements that feel possible that will preserve muscle and bring you energy. If you are carrying grief, anger, or fear, begin with emotional support. Healing does not usually begin by doing everything at once. These may not sound as dramatic as a cure, but they're not small things. They are the changes that can spark healing to begin anew inside the body. So, can the body still heal even when doctors say it can't? Sometimes, against all expectations, the answer appears to be yes. And often enough that if you are listening today from the place of fear, shock, or grief, you are absolutely allowed to hold space for possibility and hope. If this episode helped you feel less alone or a little more open to what may still be possible, follow Renegade Remission so you can stay connected to this larger healing conversation. We're going to keep exploring the pillars that show up again and again in remarkable recovery stories: nutrition, movement, stress, mindset, emotional healing, trauma, purpose, and community. And if someone came to mind while you were listening, someone who has been told there is no hope or who is trying to make sense of a frightening diagnosis, this may be an episode worth sending them to remind them that prognosis is not the same thing as destiny. In the next episode, we're going to take this mystery one step further and ask, what do people who heal against the odds often change first? Because while not every remarkable recovery can be explained, many of these journeys do leave clues, and those clues are where our own healing journey can begin and continue. Stay tuned for those episodes, and until then, go be renegades.